Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fulfilled Musicpreneur podcast. Today, I am really excited to go live. I haven't done it in a while. So, hello, everyone. I'm excited to also bring on with me Sarah Thurman. She is a number one best-selling author, inspiring speaker, women of faith, and I just love how she has reinvented herself over and over again, and her story is inspiring. And one of the reasons I'm bringing her on is I'm just hoping to inspire people to really take ownership of the new level God is calling you to. I remember starting out as an artist years ago, and it was a journey to actually start to call myself an artist, a singer songwriter. It was never one that I thought I was actually going to own. It wasn't a title that I thought was going to be me until I really felt God calling me to this. And I see people all the time where it's a journey for them to actually step into that and say, I am a singer songwriter, and I am an artist who's been called to minister to people through my music. But then beyond that, which is why I have this podcast, we then have to step into calling ourselves a successful artist. I am a business owner. I am for some people, I'm an author. Yes. Not just an author. Do you want to be a best-selling author? Sometimes you have to speak it before you see it. So I'm absolutely delighted to be interviewing Sarah today and hearing her story and hearing how she made all of these changes and reinvented herself over and over again, because this is something that we all do. And many of us, it's baby steps, right? Well, here's someone who's done it. Sarah, thank you so much for being here with us today. Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself first about all of the little things, not little, all the many things that you do, and then we can dive into your story?
Yes. Well, I'm just blessed to be here. I believe it's just an open door to be here and meet you. It's just my heart to follow God's purposes in my life. And I'm in my 66th year of life, and God has done a lot of new, even this past year. In 2024, I met the man that I'm now married to on January 5th. I had been married for 35 years to my first husband, amazing man of God, a beautiful marriage, such a support. He was the wind beneath my wings to get me started on many things. I was way more than I ever would have been without being married to him. I was the mother of 2 children. And in 2020, he passed away in January of 2020. So I was a widow for 4 years. And the first 2 years, I grieved deeply about him, for him. Like my life was shattered. The emoji that shows the heart breaking, this was my heart was broken. But my first husband, Wayman, had told me a few months before he died, Sarah, whenever I am gone, you must get remarried. And I was like, we're not talking about this. How do you know? You're going first. He said, I'm going first, and you have to get remarried. Well, for 2 years, I couldn't think of that. But then 2 years, it was late 2020, actually the last day of the year 2022, I realized I wanted to get married again. And so I started dating. And in 2024, God sent me a husband very quickly, and a mutual friend introduced us on a blind date. We met on our first date January 5th, 2024. We were engaged January 25th, 2020.
No way.
It was a significant date in my life. It was my mother's birthday. It was also the day my husband had been buried 4 years before. And we were married March 21st, 2024. Wow. So this is like this whole new beginning here. So now I'm a wife again, and I absolutely love being a wife. And in my previous life, in this other whole life I had, I was a school teacher and then became a school principal, and then a school director and school principal again. Like, so I was in Texas public schools. I received my undergraduate degree, my master's, and my doctorate in higher ed, or K 12 education. I was full into being the best principal I could be and making my schools where I was principal excellent, and served well and supported my teachers and parents and believed for every child. And it was a full career. Um, but I retired in 2014. So actually, I could spend more time with my husband and also my mom, who passed in the summer of 2014. I
Mhm.
knew she was near the end, but she had, my late husband and I took care of her the last 7 years of her life, which was an extreme calling. We did it faithfully, and I knew I needed to spend more time with her. So I retired as soon as Texas Public Schools allowed me to. It's called the 80 rule, years of service plus age. And I retired in April. And this starts this whole new life that God had in front of me. I was weary. I was worn out as a public school administrator.
Mhm.
um, but in the back of my heart, I always wanted to be an artist. But I knew I would tell you I was not an artist. That would be the farthest away from who I am was an artist. I couldn't even draw stick figures, I would say, on the board.
That was gonna be my question.
No
Did
way.
you
Never,
didn't draw at all? You had never drawn at all.
no,
So what
never
made
taken a
you
class. Because the little school I went to, we didn't have art. And in college, I wasn't an artist. So why would I take an art class? Right. This was my belief. And I was 56 years old. And my mom passed in June, okay, of 2014. I just retired. And then in October of 2014, I met with a group of women in my little town, small town, Texas, just south of Austin, called Wimberley, at a church. And we met with God, actually. And we had worship music playing. And they gave us big pieces of roofing felt. So it's like black tar paper and big squirt bottles of acrylic paint. And they're like, go paint. We're not telling you what to do. Just go paint. And it was 4 Tuesday mornings in a row. And I cried during most of that time. The second week, I was just, I'm like, I don't know what to do. But I felt something break inside of me of a healing that needed to happen. And I could not believe it was happening. And I love Tuesday mornings, but yet I was so emotional. It's like it broke open my heart to let God come through in this creative process that I had always believed I wasn't a creative. I was a wannabe, but I knew I wasn't. Oh my goodness. So what happened in the second week, I'm painting and we're quiet. There's no talking. We're listening to music. Like a lot of it was instrumental, and we're really hearing the voice of God, which I will say in a segue here, by doing this, pressing into this creative process, I have learned to hear the voice of God in new ways that I never had thought. I'm confident when I hear his voice because we're so close, because he's the creator, right? Inside of me coming out. And I heard him say to me in my thoughts, it's not the audible voice, but in my thoughts, I know it's him, and it comes in on the right side. I always hear when it comes in on the right side of my ear. I know it's him, and it comes into my thoughts. It's like an open it's an open window. I would have been brave enough to say this before, but because now I'm in this relationship with him of hearing him, he tells me, "You're an artist for me." I hear it in my thoughts, and in my thoughts I say back to him, "There is no way. I do not know what I'm doing." And he said, "Hang out with me and I will teach you." And that was his invitation. And in our processing time, in the end of that Tuesday morning, we always gathered. We looked at each other's paintings, sort of did a prophetic naming of them. I sat in the circle and I said to my friends, he's told me I'm an artist, so I'm going to believe I'm an artist. Exactly what you were talking about, Abby. I believed it. And I knew nothing. I was so primitive. In fact, the first week, the facilitator had to take my painting home like flat because I had put so much paint on it. I had no idea. Like, I love texture. Now I know I love texture, but it was part of the style that God had put inside of me. And so I wrote down and I said it out loud. He told me I'm an artist for him. I'm going to believe it. And so I started on this journey with a confidence, not really in my end product, but in the process of hanging out with him. It's
Mm.
a beautiful invitation. And I know with all of my heart, everything that I am, that he created me to be a creative, just as he did you, and just as he did every single human. The enemy has stolen from us this lie that we are not creative. And I believed it for 56 years. And one day in October of 2024, I said, I'm not believing that anymore. I'm believing what the great creator told me. If
Mm.
we are made in his image and he is the great creator, which he tells us in Genesis 1, he is, and we're made in his image, then I was made to create. And if I'm not creating, I am not letting him come forth in my purposes in life. And
Wow.
there's so many ways for him to create in us and through us. It's not just with the paintbrush, but that's how he taught me with the blank canvas. I was so intimidated and I couldn't handle anybody being around me. And those first few weeks, I'm like, somebody new is in the room. I can't stop. I don't know what to do. I don't feel safe here. And
Wow.
God then moved me to be able to paint on stage with several thousand people in the room. Doesn't bother me because I'm hanging out with him. Like, I'm with him when I'm painting.
That's
What's behind
beautiful.
me, it's
That
it's
is
not.
beautiful.
Yeah. So this process started and I could not stop. But I
Wow.
have to say that there was some discipline and accountability that came in.
Okay.
And in April of 2015, I had a history of from some years before, I will say about 6 years before, where I went into a deep depression, which I can talk about on another one of your podcasts. But I
Hmm.
could feel the edge of darkness calling me again. And I'm
Mm.
praying that day outside, God, I do not want to go back in the pit. Help me.
Mm.
And he said, I want you to paint every single day. And he led me to this process of 100 days. And there was a YouTube I watched, and it was actually a TED Talk. And this woman was an interior designer or a graphic designer. And she said, for every day for 100 days, I did a design. And I was like, God, I think you're asking me to do that, to be disciplined for 100 days to connect with you. And I did watercolor and put a journal together. And actually, that totally opened my eyes because as an artist, because I thought, yes, the sky's blue, grass is green, trees are green, bark is brown. Like, this is the color of nature. Oh my goodness, no. When you're looking, the sky will be purple and red and
Mm.
green
Mm.
if
Mm.
the light is right, right? And yellow and gray. And
Mm.
sometimes it's bright blue, but not always.
Wow.
So this process of really, it's the process of creating with him to discover more of him as he uncovers more of himself in us and lets him come through us. So I know you have a question, and actually, I'm just going to um, move just a minute because I have a little toy poodle and she's asking to go outside. So I'll just here with me.
Okay.
Not going to scratch at the back door, and so I will do that and just carry my computer.
Okay. I think what I've loved so much about what you've said so far is creating with God. You're not just doing it alone. You talked about how, you got into it and the journey you went on and how it was completely new for you, which is amazing because I suppose many of us artists, we always maybe loved music. Some of us would have grown up singing. So it's not completely new for us. But for you, it was completely new.
Yes.
But even though you got into it, there was still a period where you had to get into practice, almost like a
Yes.
discipline.
Yes. Yes.
Because my next question is about how you've made a business out of it, which you have, haven't you?
Yes,
There's a
yes.
website, and on the website there's lovely
Thank you.
art next to you. And you've
Yes,
written books, and
yes,
you're now speaking around the topic. You're a coach, you do retreats, you've
yes.
created something beautiful around it. And this is what, the Fulfilled Musicpreneur podcast is all about. I'm
Mhm.
going to actually change the announcement. I'm going to change the name to the Monetize Your Music podcast, because that makes
Yes,
it simpler for people to understand. We are encouraging and inspiring artists to monetize their music, create a business and a
yes,
service around their music to make
yes,
greater impact.
yes,
And how you started to do all of that, I would
yes.
love to hear next. How
Yeah.
you started to do all of that.
Well, it was step by step, and it was with obedience. The first step, obedience to what God was, what He told me, and I believed it. And and then that was in October of 2014. April of 2015, He told me paint every day for 100 days. Well, that's a lot of discipline. And
Mhm.
but I said, yes, God, I will. And I connected it to scripture. So in our business, as we start, we must hear from Him, but you have to sometimes step out of the boat and test the water to see, is this the direction? I like to say that you need to fish on both sides and around in the front too, bow and stern. You should be fishing all the way around. Cast your nets different places and try and see where the fruit is, see where the catch is. But always in prayer, asking Him. I journal a lot. I call it one of my creative processes as well, to ask Him, look, God, these are 5 areas. Which one do you want me to do today? It's constant communication with Him. And so I can fast forward. This was 2014, late 2014, when He told me I was an artist. And I think in the summer of 2015, I'm like, I am an artist. Like I was painting every day, but it was watercolor. And then slowly started looking for the open doors, asking God for the open doors. Where do I sell my art? Started in a very small, tiny little senior citizens art store in my little town and selling note cards for $3, special little cards I would watercolor paint, and then little tiny paintings with watercolor. My husband was also selling there, and we knew, see, there was a higher purpose behind it. It was to give money back out to people. It was for missionaries to go out. We would produce with the gifts God had given us, and it would go back out. So it wasn't to keep what we had, it was then to go back out. So it's this flow. And I can tell you now, this flow, God gives it and you put it back out and He gives you more and it comes out. It's a cycle of God that is beautiful. And so for 2 years, I was just doing little watercolor. Then in the fall of 2016, September through November 1st, my husband and I traveled overseas. So one of our sons is an overseas missionary, mostly in Central Asia, actually Mongolia, and then another country in Central Asia. And so we visited Mongolia and we went into China and Russia as well with them. Russia with them and then China later, just at the end of our trip for a couple of weeks. And it was during that time we got there and our son said to my late husband and I, Mom and Dad, we should be praying impossible prayers. So this is a really big point, y'all. What is your impossible prayer? He said, we need to be praying them to God, the impossible
Mhm.
prayer. There's no way you could do it. Only God could do it. And we need to be praying
Wow.
those. I was so embarrassed to even share with my husband, who was my best friend, my son or my daughter in law, that on the 16th of September, because I keep prayer journals of 2016, I wrote in my prayer journal, Lord, I want to paint and sell small, medium, and large paintings for you to give money back out to people in need all over the world. That was a prayer I wrote. I was painting, but and sell, that 4-letter word. And I wrote it. And I didn't tell them. We came home November 1st. November 7th, I posted a picture on my Facebook of an 8x8 angel that I painted upon my return. By this time, I'm doing acrylic, but it's just like for me, right? Like I'm just playing. And my friend in Wimberley, in my little town, said, "Is that for sale? I want to buy it for my grandmother." Boom. About 7 weeks after I wrote my impossible prayer, my first painting sold.
Wow.
She bought it for her grandmother. And then I started painting little ones for the, I was working some subbing in the school, and teachers were wanting them, the counselor was wanting them for, relatives for Christmas. And I was like selling, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And in January of 2017, my husband and I met with a small business consultant and said, we're starting our small business. And we knew the name of it would be Acts 1:8 Blessings. That God says, the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you will make my name famous in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And honestly, God's Spirit came upon me. I write left handed. I paint right-handed. I mostly use a palette knife. If I'm using a small paintbrush, I will move to my left hand, but I paint with my right hand. This side of my brain had become dormant, like I never had used it. The right side, which is actually, I think, the left side of the brain, right?
Yeah.
And this side awakened and Holy Spirit came. I know, like, and it happened. Now I painted a lot of hours every day. I cleaned my schedule where I only was doing purpose with God. God, is this in your purpose? I would pray and say, what do you want me to do today? And I would paint up 5 to 7 hours a day. And since then, I've painted and sold over 2,000 paintings. So I started
Wow.
selling really in late December or in December of 2016, but really it started in 2017. In 2017, I painted over 640 paintings that year. So if you're painting that much, you're spending a lot of time. And
Mm.
God just showed me the style. He taught me, He showed me, and spending time with Him and just trying. And I had a few close friends that would help. Like they were artists already, and they would give me some mentoring. Like if you added, I use a wooden stick a lot too. I don't use thing normal. I don't. And I just paint, and I feel, and they're part of, they come out, God coming out in me. And so
Mm.
that step, it's been step by step. Where do I sell them? God opened doors. In January, a few weeks after we named our business, and that small business group leader that we met with, consultant, said, I think your paintings would sell well in a boutique, Sara, in a women's boutique. Well, I knew of a women's boutique, and my husband said, we're stopping by and seeing if they want to sell your paintings. And I've sold over 500 paintings, probably 600 out of that boutique. And I'm welcome at any time to do a pop-up show. And it's in a very uh, tourist area in our state, in Fredericksburg, Texas. So Loca on Main is the name of it. Like God has opened doors, and now my paintings are in my little town of Wimberley in a store called My Happy Place. Like
Wow.
and I have my books there, and God has told me my first book. Why did I write my first book? He told me in the summer of 2017, you must write your story down. I said, God, I'm too busy painting. I was arguing with him. I'm too busy painting. I cannot do it. You've called me to paint. Now, how do you expect me to write? I mean, I'm pretty open back to him, right? And he's I said, if you want me to write a book, tell me what to put in it. And I was 3 hours in a quiet place in the wilderness of New Mexico, camping, dry camping. So no, just him and me. My husband was on the other part of the trailer, and he gave me the 7 chapter titles in those 3 hours
Wow.
in the summer of 2016. And I did not write for 1 year. In July of 2018, I heard his voice and my thoughts very strongly. It is right. It is time to write right now. And the right, excuse me, I knew was his voice. I would never have put those two words together. I knew that was his cleverness of creativity to say, Sara, write your book now. It is time to write it right now. You need to write right now. Right. And I said, okay, God, I'm going to. And that next month in August, we went back to New Mexico to the camping. And I asked God to give me 20,000 words. And He gave me 21,000 in the few weeks we were camping. And that was still, it didn't come out until June of 2019. Like, you're like, God, couldn't it just be faster? But every step is a process. Don't give up. There's just, it's step by step. Ask him, what is the next step? And
Mm,
if you're seeing that there is not, if there's not a harvest, if there's not like some fruit bearing, or even the hope of a fruit bearing, because you know the seed, when it goes in the ground, it has to crack open. It takes time, then you let that be dormant for a while and you start fishing on the other side of the boat.
mm,
You start put your line out another place. Don't give up on that totally, but maybe it needs to sit. Maybe that door is not going to open yet. But
mm.
if we spend all of our energy trying to go through a closed door, you will run out of steam and you will not have time and energy for the next thing he might be showing you. So I loved this analogy he would give me is, Sarah, I want you to keep start circling. Like, I want you to look around. You look around, you pray. Is that an open door, God? And then don't just count on that. And I would journal it. God, I think you
Mm.
might be working here. God, I need help here. What do you want? Do you want me to sell prints? Like, what do you want me to do? And what's the next thing? And he's just showing me this.
Wow.
But it takes time, and it takes the waiting to hear confirmation, and you look for the fruit. The fields are planted, right? Which one is going to be the one that brings the harvest? It's the one, he says, for the good and fertile soil. Don't spend your time on the rocks. We can see the rocks, but sometimes we're stubborn and say, oh, still, God, I really want to do that. I want to plant there in that rock field because it's so beautiful, or whatever we think, right? You can try it, and there may be a little harvest there. There may be some soil between some rocks, but for the long haul, and I
Yeah.
will tell you, my life has been one of surrender. Like, don't strive so hard. I mean, I have worked many, many hours, and I would say if I had to redo the last, years, which would be really, we started the business in 2017, so January. So now it's 2024, so it's 7 years. Past 7 years. I would say spend more time in the quiet with God, and be sure you're listening to Him. Soak with Him before you do, because He can make things happen like that. And
Mm.
it's not your doing, it's Him. It's Him showing you where to plant.
Beautiful, beautiful. You've talked about so much that is so
Mhm.
good. Such rich conversation. A couple of things I've taken away. The act of discipline. Sometimes there is talent, but talent will only take you so far without putting in the practice of
Yes.
disciplining, putting in lots of hours, lots of hard work into the craft,
Yes.
because that pays. Um, and then I heard you talk about involving people in your business.
Yes.
I assume some of these people you had to pay them. So you talked about a small business consultant.
Yes.
And
Yes.
did you probably use the publisher?
Yes. Well, no, I self-published, but I use a consultant to help me.
Yes.
So with each book, it's been a little different, but sometimes I used an editor, like
Yeah.
started actually with a friend who was an eighth grade English teacher who knew writing very well, right? And she was my first editor. And it was the
Mm,
first book she'd ever edited. And it became a #1 bestseller. Small Beginnings, A Journey to the Impossible. Really
wow.
my memoir of that part of my life, until
Mhm.
20, as I was painting and selling. That one came out in 2019 in June.
Mm.
But then I've always just self-published because the publisher hasn't come to me yet. And I knew that I couldn't wait for the no's. As I studied, what God, do you want me to go with a publisher? I knew the negatives, no, 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 was going to be too much for me. And I am like focused, I'm going to do it. I'm going to publish
Yeah,
the book.
absolutely. And I mean that's important that you said God is saying to this now. It needs to happen now. So what is the quickest but most efficient way? Because you didn't do it alone. You realized that you still needed help, someone who knew what to do.
Yes, yes,
Um, so you got help when appropriate. And
yes.
And
Absolutely.
sometimes you had to pay these people. So that's
Yes.
another
Yes, you
investment as
do.
well.
But it's an investment, and in the United States, it's written off. It's one of your expenses. So you keep track and you write it off. Like you can take it, subtract it from your earnings, from your
Mhm.
gross.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. But that this is such an incredible journey, such an incredible journey. And then now you go ahead to teach other people,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you teach people art. What do you teach
Well,
people?
I have a mentoring group. It's called the Inner Circle of Small Beginnings with Sara, and it is a creative mentoring group. It's every Monday morning, U.S. time Central, 9 a.m., 9 to 10, and we use scripture and we pray for each other for wherever we are to do the next step, whatever it is. And we are like a sisterhood. It's been going now for May will be 5 years this next May. So it started in May of 2020 in the midst of COVID on Zoom. We all love Zoom. We love Zoom. Without Zoom, we would not be a group. And right now it's around 30 women. It's been up to over 40, but there's seasons for people. And it's open. I have excuse me, one lady in Mozambique, one lady in Canada. The rest are from in US, all the way from Vermont, New Hampshire, all the way to Washington State. So it's beautiful, and it is a mentoring. And I meet their needs. I like what do they need, and we really hang with Scripture. It's our anchor. But then I started a podcast when God told me. I think I started it in 2020 after my late husband died. And I was like, God, what? And he showed me and he sent me people to help me. And
Mm,
I did it in 2020, 2021. I didn't. I started it again. And now it's still called Small Beginnings with Sara. I come out every week. And now I've been talking about my new marriage and how God is doing. See, we're not, I thought, oh, the only small beginning in my life was I'm going to become an artist. No, every stage, there is new small beginnings. He is continuing to transform us in obedience with all the new.
mm,
Yeah, so I have asked for help, and sometimes it comes free, and sometimes you have to pay.
mm,
And the payment can be like, but you can ask for discounts. And I use some consultants out of New York City. They really help me with all my books to become bestsellers. Number one, in their certain genre and on Amazon. And I became a national best-selling author. One of my children's books was the top 5,000 out of the 9 million books that were on. So I've written two children's books and done my own illustrations, like not with a lot of confidence, like, do I really? And then like, yes, you have to. It's part of your story because they're not perfect. The little girl's like, oh my goodness, she doesn't look so great. But I have a dear friend who's a watercolor artist and a retired art teacher. She came and sat with me and helped guide me. I did
mhm,
the work, but she was there.
mm.
So God will send us help. He will send us help if we need it. Ask him,
Absolutely.
he will send help.
True. I think that's how I got started as well. In the past, I dabbled a little bit with music because I always loved it. I was always in the choir in church, and I also did some songwriting initially. And then one time I was like, oh, let me actually go to the studio and record one of these original songs that I've written. And I did that, and then I got stuck. I was like, I have no clue what to do next.
Mm,
Um, and it just sort of just stayed. I never released it
right.
because again, I think it was a time thing,
Yeah.
you know. But then when I received that call that God was calling me to do this,
Mhm.
straight away I realized that He had surrounded me with every single person that I would need to get started on my journey.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just realized that actually this is no longer a struggle. I'm not having to actually find, I'm not stuck. I have everything I needed. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
When is the right time, when God is calling you to something,
Yes.
He will
But
send
you
people.
need to be ready. You need to be ready. You need to be ready. Like when like you need the artwork done. Don't be waiting. You should be painting every day or 6 days a week. You can rest on one day. You should carry your sketchbook with you.
Mm,
Like you should be ready. You should be building this craft. It's the muscles that God will expand for you because he sees your obedience. I
mm,
mean, my art is still quite primitive, I would say. Um, but my new husband says, I think you need to paint today because then when he comes home from work, I'm much calmer and like I'm just like, yeah, it
beautiful.
is a time with God to paint.
Mm,
And it's with such purpose. And I think that's another big point I want to share with
yes,
your audience
purpose.
is you ask God, what purpose do you have for me to do this? Because
Mm,
if it is God's purpose, he will help you
yes.
because it's for his glory. It's for him.
Mm,
And because it's not just for us. Yes, he wants us to feel successful as a creative, but it is ultimately everything we do is to bring glory to him, you
absolutely.
know.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely. That your why in your journey, it's so clear what your why is. When you started to monetize, you were like, I need funds to send out to
Yes.
missionaries,
Yes.
and you need to know what your why is. What your
Yes.
why
Mhm, mhm.
it's so key
Yes.
in helping you along in the journey and in owning those steps and in making those big steps. You know,
Yes.
when you have a why, when you know God is calling you to this,
Yes.
it's not such a big deal to figure out how to write a book, how to write and release a book, because you know there is a purpose in that's
Yes.
linked to all of this.
Mhm. He is in the middle of the process. And I just had a thought that I just want to release. I feel like there might be people in your audience that really love writing like children's songs. And maybe it's for their own children or for their grandchildren. They need to be doing that because those songs will carry the love to the next generation. There could be a children's album. I feel like that's somebody, you know?
I have I have a client who does write songs
Yeah,
for kids.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
will make
so it
sure
may
I
like
send
it's
this to
maybe
her.
not for the adults, but those children, oh my
Mm,
goodness, music is it speaks to their
wow.
heart. The brain is very much aware and awake to music at an early age.
Mm,
Yeah. And also to creativity in the arts. I mean, I
mm,
paint with my grandchildren. At right now I have 6 grandchildren ages 5 and under, and 5 of them painted with me on Saturday. I was with all of them this past weekend, and 5 of them painted. Now, I didn't have time to paint. I am like wiping paint off of their hands, and they all were shirtless because we're like, "You're gonna get" we didn't have aprons for them, but it was so beautiful. It was so
mm.
beautiful.
Wow. Well, this has been such a rich conversation. I wanted to just take it all in, but also say thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Sarah, for sharing with us. And it's amazing to see what God has done in your life as you've obeyed Him and stepped out in faith and done all of these things. I've been blessed by this conversation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mm,
You're welcome. My books are on Amazon, and you can find me, sarathurman.com, SaraThurman. That's my marketing name now. It's not my new married name is Sarah Price, but I still am keeping my Sarah Thurman signing my paintings because it's my known name
mm.
in my art business.
Yes, yes. So your website, Sarah Thurman,
Yes,
your artwork, all of that is
yes,
there.
yes.
Um, and I'm gonna get you back on the Harmony and Healing podcast as well because
Great.
there's so much more for you to share.
Yes,
I'm really excited about that.
yes, yes. Yeah.
And for everyone else who's listening, if you haven't got your tickets to the concert coming up, the the Scars to Gold concert coming up on November 22nd, and there are virtual tickets. Make sure you go to the website now, abiogini.com, and get your tickets. It's going to be amazing. Lovely original songs, stories that will inspire you. It's going to be so good. And thank you, everyone, for watching. For those that watched on Facebook and for those that will be watching at a later stage, please say hi, say, um, rewatched or whatever they say. What's that word they say? When you watch out later stage, just make sure you
The
comment
recording.
so I know. And I will see you all at another live, I think next week, maybe even same time. All right, thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye bye.